Allison?
Okay, Phil, thanks so much for the background. Let's talk more about Trump's claim that Judge Curiel has an inherent conflict of interest because of his Mexican heritage. Joining us to do so is the president of the Hispanic National Bar Association and a Trump critic, Robert Maldonado, and former member of the New Mexico House of Representatives and a Trump supporter, David Chavez. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Lynn.
Mr. Maldonado, let me start with you. Why does it bother you that Trump pointed out this judge's Mexican heritage and says it's a conflict of interest?
Well, it's outrageous to criticize a federal judge simply for his Hispanic heritage. Judges are vetted by the Senate. They're vetted by a bipartisan Senate. They're public servants. They do their job.
He's not exactly criticizing him. He's saying that he has a conflict of interest because Donald Trump has been so public about wanting to build a wall between Mexico and the U.S. and because the judge seems to be so proud of his Mexican heritage that that's a conflict of interest. What do you
That's not an inherent conflict of interest. It's making assumptions. It's a prejudice, making assumptions about a person because of their heritage, presuming that he is against Donald Trump's stance on building a wall without any facts or any basis. It's making assumptions about judges that should not be tolerated.
Mr. Chavez, you are a Trump supporter and you are Hispanic. Why aren't you bothered by what Mr. Maldonado has just said about those statements?
Well, good morning, Allison. Buenos dias from New Mexico. First of all, any judge is not immune from critique. Also, you don't want to have any appearance of improprietorship.
But what has the judge done that has been some impropriety?
Well, I'm not saying he's done anything, but you don't want to have an appearance. So, again, every judge has the opportunity to recuse himself, and if he had a certain dissent that may cause this to be raised as an issue, and you've got the presidential presumptive nominee involved in this lawsuit that's before him, I think you take a second look at it. My father was a district judge in New Mexico, tried many, many cases. I've tried many, many cases to verdict. I've had issues come before the courts as well, and so that's a decision the court has to make.
But Mr. Chavez, I just want to be clear on what you're saying. You're saying that you and your father could never have tried a case that involved Hispanics.
Oh, absolutely no. We try them all the time.
So then what's the difference between this judge who is of Hispanic background and this case? Why are you saying that's an inherent conflict of interest?
No. It's not an inherent conflict of interest. Number one, there's an issue, a threshold question of, is there an appearance of improprietorship? And that was the issue that was raised through the release of these documents to the public. So when you have internal documents released to the public, that then becomes an issue.
Okay, so let me just be clear. So you're saying that because he released those internal documents, that is the conflict of interest. He says that he did it because there's national interest in all of this. You're saying because the judge released the documents, not because he's Hispanic.
No, not at all. I'm saying that when certain actions are taken by a judge, then his actions are scrutinized, and then he comes under critique by Trump, and that's what's happened here. In other words, there was other ways that this court could have handled the case. He could have had a sequestered hearing on these documents. He could have sealed these documents. He could have had an in-camera review of these documents. So there's procedures that could have been in place that would have allowed this case to move forward in the sanctity of the courtroom and not for public opinion.
Okay,
that's
Mr.
the problem with the case.
Do you understand that argument?
Not at all. And the critique on this judge is not at all based upon anything that he's done in the courtroom. It's based solely on his Hispanic heritage. And Mr. Trump says he should be disqualified solely based on his Hispanic heritage. Not because of any decision he made, but the decision is what propels the racism. And that's what's going on here. And that should not be tolerated.
I want to ask you both about Mr. Trump's seeming squabble with Governor Susana Martinez of New Mexico. That's your governor, Mr. Chavez, of course. You know, Mr. Trump had criticized her, and that got a lot of attention. So yesterday, Susana Martinez came out and said why she is not endorsing Donald Trump yet. Listen to this.
He needs to address his plans for us, and the New Mexico people deserve to get that answer. He's not addressed it yet. I will tell you, I'm not going to be voting for Hillary Clinton. I'm waiting to hear from him as to addressing the issues facing New Mexico. Once I hear that, we'll see.
Okay, she says, once I hear that, then we'll see what happens. And that prompted Donald Trump to put this out. I'd like to have Governor Susana Martinez's support. I respect her. I have always liked her. Mr. Chavez, that is a completely different tone than the one he took last week, where he was critical of her and said she had not done a good job for your state, and he had this whole litany of complaints against her. Why the change?
Well, number one, I was at the event. The governor had the opportunity to appear. I know the governor. She's a very good friend of mine. I supported the governor, served with the governor when I was in the legislature. She works very, very hard. She's very good for New Mexico. You also have to remember, in New Mexico, we have a Democratic-controlled Senate, and so there was a lot of conflict
but were you
between
comfortable
the
with the things that Mr. Trump, given that your long history with the governor, were you comfortable with the criticisms that Mr. Trump leveled against her?
I have no problem with the comments that he made. I think
that she hasn't done a good job for your state?
Well, those are his opinions. She's done very good for New Mexico. And she had the opportunity to visit with Trump and Bill Bridges, and she chose not to. And she'll make her decisions in due time. But she had an opportunity, when he came to New Mexico, to visit with him, talk to him, discuss their differences. And she'll do it on her own time and as she determines appropriate for New Mexico. And look, we look forward to having Donald Trump back to New Mexico in the near future. He said he was going to be coming back to New Mexico, so we look forward to welcoming him back in New Mexico.
Okay, very good. Mr. Maldonado, do any of these comments, do you think, hurt him with the Hispanic community?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lack of trust. There's this talk of hate that needs to end. It's offensive to the Latino community. He needs to apologize to Judge Curiel. He needs to apologize to the Latino community. He needs to apologize to all the federal judges who serve this country. His remarks are an offense to the judiciary. They're an offense to our system of democracy.
Mr. Maldonado, Mr. Chavez, thank you very much for being on New Day with both your perspectives.